The Young and the Restless spoilers shock, the betrayal and rescue. Ian Ward's final move against Jordan. Ian Ward had reached his limit. Jordan's defiance had crossed a line, and her refusal to follow his orders was the final straw. For Ian, control was everything, and anyone who threatened his dominance had to be eliminated. His decision was cold, calculated, and swift. He would destroy Jordan, and he had all the tools he needed to do it. Ian's anonymous tip. With a sinister smile, Ian composed an anonymous message to Nick. It was short but packed with devastating revelations. Location: the exact coordinates of the bunker where Sharon was being held. Video evidence: a damning clip showing Jordan in the act of killing Heather, a recording Ian had kept hidden, waiting for the perfect moment to use it. The message was sent, and Ian sat back, knowing the chaos that would ensue. His goal wasn't just to eliminate Jordan but to sow as much destruction as possible along the way. Nick would come for Sharon, Jordan would be exposed, and Ian's hands would remain clean in the eyes of the world. Nick's desperate drive. When Nick's phone buzzed with the anonymous message, he hesitated for only a moment before reading it. His heart sank as he saw Sharon's location. It was a place he recognized all too well, a bunker that had once been used to hold Faith captive. The memories flooded back, filling him with rage and determination. "Why there?" he muttered, his knuckles tightening on the steering wheel as he sped toward the location. "Why use that place again?" Nick didn't have time to dwell on whether Jordan had chosen the location deliberately or out of convenience. All that mattered was getting to Sharon. He floored the accelerator, his mind racing with thoughts of her safety. The bunker and the echoes of the past. The bunker loomed ahead, its shadowy structure a grim reminder of past horrors. Nick jumped out of the car, calling Sharon's name at the top of his lungs. His voice echoed through the empty night, raw with desperation. "Sharon? Sharon, where are you?" A faint voice called back, trembling but unmistakably hers. "Nick. I'm here." Hearing her response sent a jolt through Nick's heart. His relief was tinged with anger at the thought of her suffering. He sprinted toward the bunker, his adrenaline surging as he reached the door. Breaking through the door was locked, but Nick didn't hesitate. He slammed his shoulder into it, once, twice, until the wood gave way with a deafening crack. The sound reverberated through the bunker as he charged inside, his eyes scanning the dimly lit space. "Sharon," he called again, his voice catching in his throat. "In here," her voice came again, stronger this time. Nick followed the sound to a small, cold room. What he saw stopped him in his tracks. Sharon was there, chained to a rusted pipe, her wrists bruised and her face pale. The sight of her in such a state made his chest tighten with anguish. "Sharon," he whispered, his voice breaking as he rushed to her side. A heartbreaking reunion. Nick knelt beside Sharon, his hands trembling as he reached for the chains binding her. "I'm here," he said softly, his voice choked with emotion. "I'm getting you out of here." Sharon's eyes filled with tears as she looked at him. "Nick. I thought you wouldn't find me." "I'll always find you," he said firmly. "No matter what, I'll always come for you." The chains were heavy and tightly secured, but Nick didn't care. He grabbed a nearby piece of metal and began prying at the lock with all his strength. His hands bled from the effort, but he refused to stop. The aftermath of Ian's plan. As Nick worked to free Sharon, the weight of Ian's plan began to unfold. The video evidence he had sent to Nick was already making its way into the hands of the authorities. Jordan's fate was sealed, there would be no escaping the law now. But for Ian, this was only the beginning. His ultimate goal remained hidden, and the chaos he had unleashed was just another step in his larger scheme. He had succeeded in driving a wedge between his enemies, leaving them to pick up the pieces. The mystery of the bunker. As Nick freed Sharon and carried her out of the bunker, a question lingered in his mind: why had Jordan chosen this place? Was it an intentional move, a cruel reminder of the past, or merely a coincidence? Sharon, too, wondered about the sinister connection. As Nick held her close, she whispered, "Why here, Nick? Why this place again? I don't know, he admitted, his voice heavy with frustration. But we'll figure it out. Right now, we need to get you safe. A moment of safety, but more questions ahead as they drove away from the bunker. Nick glanced at Sharon in the passenger seat. She was weak but alive, and for that, he was grateful. But the questions weighing on them both refused to fade. Who had sent the message? What was Ian's true motive? And most importantly, would they ever be free of his influence? For now, the nightmare was over. But with Ian Ward still lurking in the shadows, Sharon and Nick knew this was far from the end. The final confrontation, Nick, Sharon, and Jordan's deadly choice. As Nick and Sharon emerged from the bunker, the weight of their ordeal seemed to momentarily lift. In the safety of his arms, Sharon finally broke down, her tears flowing freely. She did this to me, Sharon sobbed. Jordan, she's the one who took me. She kept me in that hellhole. I don't understand why. Nick held her tightly, his own anger simmering just beneath the surface. It's over now, he said softly, though his voice was laced with barely restrained fury. I won't let her hurt you again. But before they could fully process the moment, a shadow emerged from the darkness. It was Jordan, and in her hand was a gun. A deadly confrontation. Jordan stepped forward, her expression a mixture of rage and desperation. The gun in her hand trembled slightly, but her voice was steady. You think you can just walk away from this, she said, her gaze flicking between Nick and Sharon. Do you have any idea what I've been through? You're not taking this from me. Nick instinctively moved in front of Sharon, shielding her with his body. Jordan, put the gun down, he said, his voice firm but calm. This doesn't have to end like this. Jordan laughed bitterly, her grip tightening on the gun. Doesn't it? After everything I've done, after everything I've lost, what do I have left? Nothing. Because of her. She pointed the gun at Sharon, her hand shaking with anger. Nick's control snapped. Without thinking, he lunged at Jordan, grabbing her wrist and forcing the gun away from Sharon. The weapon discharged, the sound deafening in the confined space, but the shot went wide, embedding itself harmlessly in the wall. Nick wrestled Jordan to the ground, his hands gripping her throat. His face was a mask of fury as he shouted, Why, Jordan? Why would you do this to Sharon? What did she ever do to you? Jordan struggled beneath him, her voice choked but defiant. She took everything from me. Ian promised me freedom, power, a new life, but she ruined it all. She always ruins everything. The breaking point. Nick hesitated, his grip loosening as Sharon's voice broke through his anger. Nick. Stop. She's not worth it. Jordan took advantage of his momentary lapse, shoving him off and scrambling to her feet. The gun was still within her reach, and she grabbed it with trembling hands. Neither of you are walking out of here, she screamed, her eyes wild. If I go down, you're coming with me. A desperate escape. Nick and Sharon exchanged a glance, their unspoken bond stronger than ever. In a single moment, Nick sprang into action, grabbing a nearby metal pipe and swinging it toward Jordan. The move startled her, and she stumbled backward, losing her grip on the gun. Sharon seized the opportunity, grabbing Nick's arm and pulling him toward the exit. We have to go, now, she shouted. Jordan, now disarmed but undeterred, screamed after them. You can't run from this. You'll never be safe. Nick and Sharon didn't look back. They raced through the bunker's corridors, their footsteps echoing as they navigated the maze-like structure. Each turn felt like a lifetime, the fear of Jordan catching up driving them forward. Freedom at last. Finally, they burst into the cool night air, their lungs burning but their spirits unbroken. Nick turned to Sharon, his hands cupping her face. Are you okay? Did she hurt you? Sharon shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm fine, now that we're out. I thought we wouldn't make it. Nick pulled her into a tight embrace, his voice fierce. You're safe now. I promise, she won't hurt you again. Jordan's fate inside the bunker. Jordan sat slumped against the wall, her breath ragged. She had lost everything, her plan, her leverage, her sanity. The sound of approaching sirens echoed through the night, and for the first time, she realized that her reign of terror was truly over. As the authorities arrived, led by Chance and Michael, Jordan made no attempt to flee. She knew her time had run out. The aftermath. Nick and Sharon watched from a distance as Jordan was led away in handcuffs. The weight of the ordeal still hung heavy between them, but for the first time in days, they felt a glimmer of hope. It's over, Nick said quietly, his arm wrapped protectively around Sharon. She's gone. Sharon leaned into him, her voice soft. Thank you, Nick. For everything. Nick pressed a kiss to her forehead, his heart full of resolve. You never have to thank me. I'll always fight for you. As they walked away, the nightmare of the past days began to fade, replaced by the promise of a brighter, safer future, together.